When you think Guns N' Roses, you may picture Axl or Slash, but you definitely hear the guitar sound. So would it surprise you to know that the South Bay was instrumental, sort of the pun, in the Guns N' Roses sound? Let's explore the history of G&R in the South Bay on PCZ-TV. PCZ-TV. Okay, let's be honest. When you think of the music of the South Bay, you think Black Flag, The Descendants, or Pennywise, just to name a few. But I'm telling you that the iconic Slash guitar sound owes its origins to the South Bay. What is this of which you speak? Lots to unpack here, so let's begin. To understand how important it was, we have to jump back in time to the 1980s. Big hair, super strats, and Eddie Van Halen were the rage. But this wasn't Slash's style. And when he went into the studio, he brought along some BC Riches, some Jacksons, and even a Gibson SG, but he couldn't get the sound he wanted. And here is where the two worlds meet.
Back in 1986, when I did the Appetite for Destruction record, my manager gave me basically it was a copy of a Les Paul 59. But it was this really beautiful handmade 59 copy, basically. And so I used that for that album and consequently, many albums since then.
His manager, Alan Niven, had stopped off in the South Bay and made a purchase that would change Slash forever.
But there was a music store called Music Works in Redondo Beach. And apparently Jim Foote, who was the owner of that store, was basically a broker for these 59 reissues or 59 replicas.
And this guitar had Gibson on the headstock, but it wasn't a Gibson.
Let's talk something that will be controversial on the internet. Your famous Les Paul is a Kris Derrig, not a Gibson.
Right.
How did that guitar come to be? Who is Kris Derrig?
Okay.
It was actually made by a luthier living in a trailer behind Music Works store on Artesia Boulevard, Kris Derrig. So Kris was a musician and luthier and was born in Massachusetts, but was a huge fan of Southern rock, where the Les Paul sound reigned supreme. So naturally, he set about making copies of the hard-to-find and expensive Les Pauls of the golden era of the 50s. And you've no doubt guessed, he ended up in California in the 80s and got a job working for Jim at Music Works and building his Gibson replicas, which Niven took to Slash.
All right, so Alan Niven, Guns' manager back in the day, he brought me this Les Paul to a Take One recording studio in Burbank. So he got me the guitar and I plugged it in, I rented a Marshall from SIR, and it just sounded great.
Instantly, Appetite producer Mike Klink knew that Derrig and Slash were meant for each other. And Slash knew it too. In another ironic twist, Slash's shirt features Goodyear. And the Goodyear blimp is based in the South Bay.
Coincidence? I think not!
Anyway, from that point on, Slash's now iconic sound became a part of the major ingredient of all his music moving forward.
This guitar has a very sort of great, unique tone to it. And so I use it whenever I go into the studio. It's always there in case anything else I have doesn't work. Right?
Yeah. There's a lot of hits on this guitar,
yeah,
man.
and we used it for this latest record, right?
Yeah.
And I would put it, I would use it, and Dave would go, "What's that? What's that guitar?" Well, it's the Derrig. You go, "Oh, okay." So he's totally recognized it.
Slash and the Les Paul became inseparable. Unfortunately, Kris passed away not knowing the impact he had.
But that's the whole story. And so Kris, and I never met Kris. He passed away around the time that I actually got the guitar, or just prior to that. But I have, I think, 3 of his guitars, and they're just really, really well made and technically accurate.
In an ironic twist, Gibson started producing Slash signature models
And so at one point I went to Gibson and I said, well, why don't we make a real Gibson copy of a Gibson copy? So basically the Slash Les Paul is modeled after the 59 copy of a Les Paul that I've had since 1986.
A copy of a copy. An homage? Now, Music Works is still there. A small store dwarfed by the neighboring Guitar Center, with few passing by during the day knowing the impact it had on the music scene. So the sound of Slash is the sound of the South Bay. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. If you've enjoyed this South Bay history, check out some of my other South Bay videos. Bye!